Thank you for coming to Wayne Unhinged Extended. Today we will talk about the 18th October report from the UN on human rights in Ukraine. Let's go through the enumerated items to number 115 on this document. I want to remind you, this is from February to March 2022, and it has been well studied by the people reporting here, both in person and online. Items 1 to 5 are the who, what, where, when, and why for the IICIU. Items 6 to 13 are the methodologies used. I'd like to highlight items 10 through 12. Number 10, consistent with the standard of proof followed by most international commissions of inquiry, the Commission includes findings in its report when, based on a body of verified information, an objective and ordinary prudent observer would have reasonable grounds to conclude that the facts took place as described. It draws legal conclusions when there are reasonable grounds to conclude that the facts meet all the elements of a violation or abuse, and, where possible, that an individual or entity is responsible for the violation or abuse. Number 11. As of the moment of the submission of the present report, the Commission traveled 5 times to Ukraine and visited 27 cities, towns, and settlements to conduct its inquiry into the events. The team collected and preserved evidence of violations and related crimes. And number 12. In preparing the report, the Commission relied on 191 interviews with 110 women and 81 men, conducted in person and remotely, inspected sites of destruction, graves, places of detention and torture, as well as weapon remnants, and consulted a large number of documents and reports. It met with government authorities, international organizations, civil society, and other relevant stakeholders. Numbers 14 through 18 are the framework of national and international laws and treaties referenced, including an explanation of how the ICC fits in. That's the International Criminal Court. Items 19 through 22 are the other agencies the IICIU has involved. I'd like to highlight line item 23. Information and documentation collected by the Commission will be shared with competent investigative, prosecutorial, and judicial authorities to facilitate and expedite criminal proceedings under conditions of fairness, due process, non-applicability of the death penalty, and compliance with other relevant human rights standards. The consent of witnesses and other interlocutors for external uses of the information is fundamental in handling such requests. The Commission uses protocols for informed consent from the victims and witnesses during its investigations. In each case, risks to victims, witnesses, or information providers and respect for confidentiality will be considered. Items 24 to 25 are the background facts on how the war started. Items 26 through 32 are documented military actions from the 24th of February to the 19th of April 2022. Then, items 33 to 35 are the impacts on civilians, the 6,306 killed and 9,602 wounded civilians up to October 17, 2022, and the strain on some who can't leave their homes and are at increased risk. Items 36 to 37 state what, where, and how the IICIU investigated. From here, we're going to avoid stating specifics because they are pretty graphic. This next section is about the conduct of hostilities. Item 38, overview of the conclusion that many war crimes absolutely were perpetrated by the Russian armed forces, and it concedes that both sides failed to adequately protect civilians, but that Russia went as far as killing the fleeing. Items 39 to 43 identify the specific impacts of the use of explosive weapons on civilian areas. Items 44 to 51 specify indiscriminate attacks with explosive weapons and summarize evidence that no civilian casualty mitigation attempts were made in planning the delivery of these explosives. Items 52 to 55 identify incidents of civilians being endangered by either negligent or intentional behaviors on the part of the Russian armed forces. Items 56 to 59 are about attacks on civilians, many of which made the news. Items 60 to 64 are about violations against personal integrity, including sexual violence, mass search, and confiscation under threat of force. Items 65 to 74 are all individual instances of summary executions. Items 75 to 80 describe the inhumane conditions of detention in makeshift facilities underprepared to host so many living people. They also describe forcible deportations. Items 81 to 87 describe the physical torture methods used on captives by the Russian armed forces. They are many, they are varied, they are horrible. Items 88 to 98 are just some of the stories of sexual violence committed by the Russian armed forces. And remember, any evidence cited here has been thoroughly vetted for months by the UN organization before they state it as evidence here. Items 99 to 108 paint a bleak picture of the impacts on children. I encourage you to read them. Items 109 to 112 are the conclusions that war crimes have taken place and the synopses of the victims' hope for perpetrators to be brought to trial and for the truth to come out. Items 113 to 115 state the IICIU will broaden its scope and both protect and advocate for victims while continuing to investigate the ongoing war. Now that is a lot to unpack, but I think it speaks for itself.